A waitress with a photographic memory became the only person who could destroy a crime empire. She remembered everything, every face, every order, every whispered secret, and that gift was about to make her the most dangerous woman in the city. This is the story of how an ordinary woman used her extraordinary mind to outwit the most powerful criminal in the city and discovered a strength she never knew she had. Elena Corso had a gift she'd never asked for. She remembered everything. Every customer who walked through the brass-trimmed doors of Vittorio's restaurant. Every conversation overheard while refilling water glasses. Every face, every name, every seemingly insignificant detail that most people forgot the moment it happened. It wasn't photographic memory in the technical sense. It was something deeper, more complete, like her brain was a vault that never stopped recording. Tonight, the restaurant hummed with its usual Friday energy. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white tablecloths. The scent of garlic and fresh basil drifted from the kitchen. Elena moved between tables with practiced grace, her black apron tied neatly, her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun. Table 7 ordered the osso buco. Table 12 wanted extra parmesan. Table 4, the elderly couple celebrating their anniversary, needed a new bottle of wine. She never wrote anything down. She didn't need to. Elena, Marco, the head waiter, whispered as she passed. Table 9. Be careful. She glanced toward the corner booth. 3 men in expensive suits sat in the shadows, their voices low. The one in the middle had silver hair slicked back, a face carved from stone, and eyes that seemed to calculate the worth of everything they touched. Vincent Dante. Everyone in the city knew that name. Most were smart enough to never say it out loud. He owned half the legitimate businesses in town and all of the illegitimate ones. Restaurants, construction companies, ports. His empire was built on fear, loyalty, and carefully maintained silence. And he'd been coming to Vittorio's every Friday for 3 years. Elena approached the table, her expression neutral. Good evening, Mr. Dante. The usual. His eyes flickered to her. Cold. Assessing. You remember. Always, she said simply. The faintest hint of something, amusement, maybe, crossed his face. Veal piccata. No capers. The Barolo, 09. Of course. As she turned to leave, one of his companions leaned in, speaking in rapid Italian. She caught fragments. Something about a shipment. A name, Castellano. A location near the docks. She kept walking, her face unchanged. But in her mind, the information locked into place like pieces on a chessboard. She'd learned long ago that her memory was both blessing and curse. In school, it made her a star student. In life, it meant she carried the weight of things she wished she could forget. Failed relationships, painful moments, words that cut deep. And now, apparently, mob business. Elena delivered the order to the kitchen and continued her rounds. She smiled at regulars, soothed a complaint about overcooked pasta, recommended the tiramisu to a young couple on their first date. Normal, routine, safe, until she returned to table 9 with Vincent Dante's wine. As she poured, another man approached the booth. Younger, nervous energy radiating from him. He slid into the seat and immediately started talking in hushed, urgent tones. Elena's hands remained steady. The shipment's compromised. Castellano thinks there's a leak. Vincent's hand rose slightly. Silence fell. His eyes locked onto Elena. She finished pouring without a tremor, set the bottle down gently. Enjoy your evening, gentlemen. She walked away, feeling his gaze burn into her back. In the kitchen, she allowed herself one deep breath. Marco appeared beside her. You okay? Fine, she lied. But as she glanced back through the service window, she saw Vincent Dante still watching her. And for the first time in 3 years, Elena realized something terrifying. He knew. He knew she'd been listening. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small apartment above a laundromat, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying every second of the evening. Vincent Dante's expression, the way the conversation stopped the moment she approached. That final, lingering look. She'd been invisible for 3 years. A fixture, background noise in expensive suits, and whispered deals. Now she'd been seen. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray. Elena dressed for her shift, her hands steadier than her thoughts. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe that look meant nothing. Maybe. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello. Miss Corso. The voice was smooth, measured, professional. Mr. Dante would like to invite you to lunch today. 1 o'clock. Bella Vista on 5th Street. Her throat went dry. I work today. Arrangements have been made with your manager. A car will collect you at 12:45. The line went dead. Elena's hand trembled as she lowered the phone. This wasn't an invitation. Invitations could be declined. This was a summons. The Blacktown car arrived exactly on time. The driver said nothing as he opened the door. Elena slid into the leather interior, her heart hammering against her ribs. The city blurred past the tinted windows. Familiar streets suddenly felt foreign, dangerous. Bella Vista was one of those restaurants that didn't advertise. No sign outside. No website. You either knew about it or you didn't belong there. Elena had never been inside. The driver opened her door in front of a discreet entrance. A hostess in a pristine black dress appeared immediately, as if she'd been waiting. Miss Corso, this way, please. They walked through a dining room that whispered old money and older secrets. Past tables of men who looked like they owned entire industries. Past paintings that probably belonged in museums. To a private room in the back. Vincent Dante sat alone at a table set for two. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He stood as she entered, a gesture that somehow felt more threatening than welcoming. Elena, thank you for coming. She had no choice, and they both knew it. Please, sit. She did, because her legs weren't sure they'd hold her much longer. He settled across from her, his movements unhurried. Calm. A waiter appeared, poured wine, vanished like smoke. You're nervous, Vincent observed. Should I be? The corner of his mouth lifted. Almost a smile. That depends entirely on you. He studied her the way someone might study a painting, appreciating the details, looking for flaws, assessing value. 3 years you've worked at Vittorio's, he said. Never missed a shift. Never asked questions. Never made mistakes. I'm good at my job. You're exceptional at it. He lifted his wine glass, but didn't drink. You have a remarkable memory. There it was. The reason she was here. Elena met his gaze, forcing herself not to look away. I remember orders. Customer preferences. It's not that unusual, isn't it? He set the glass down. Tell me, Elena, what did the couple at table 12 order last Friday? Her mind pulled the information instantly. Appetizer, carpaccio, extra lemon. 2 entrees, branzino and the lamb shank. They shared a bottle of Pinot Grigio. The woman asked for the dressing on the side. Vincent's expression didn't change. And the Friday before that? They weren't there that Friday. They came on Thursday instead. Sat at table 8. Both ordered risotto. Silence stretched between them. Extraordinary, he said softly. A different waiter appeared with their first course. Elena hadn't ordered, but apparently the meal had been predetermined. Like everything else about this lunch. I'm going to be direct with you, Vincent said. Because I believe you're intelligent enough to appreciate honesty. He cut into his food with surgical precision. You heard something last night. At my table. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. Lying would be pointless. I hear lots of things. I don't repeat them. 3 years, he repeated. You've served my table dozens of times. Heard countless conversations. And you've never once repeated anything, have you? No. Why not? The question caught her off guard. Because it's not my business. The police would pay well for what you know. Her hands clenched in her lap. I'm not interested in their money. Then what are you interested in? The real question underneath. What's your price? Everyone had one. Elena looked at this man who controlled the city's underworld, who could make people disappear with a phone call, who held her entire future in his perfectly manicured hands. I'm interested in living my life without complications, she said quietly. I come to work. I do my job. I go home. That's all I want. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. A real one this time. I believe you, he said. Which presents me with an interesting dilemma. He leaned back in his chair. You see, Elena, I have a problem. Someone in my organization is talking to people they shouldn't. Sharing information that's getting my people hurt. And I can't figure out who. His eyes locked onto hers. But someone with your gift? Someone who remembers every face, every conversation, every detail. The implication hung in the air like a blade. You could help me find them. Elena's fork clattered against her plate. You want me to spy for you? I want you to observe, Vincent corrected. Something you already do naturally. For you, she repeated. For the mob. He didn't flinch at the word. For someone who values loyalty, who protects the people who work for him, who would ensure that a young woman with a remarkable talent never has to worry about her safety or her future. The threat was wrapped in velvet, but it was still a threat. Elena forced herself to breathe, to think. And if I say no? Vincent picked up his wine glass, swirling the dark liquid. Then you continue your life exactly as it is. Waiting tables. Living paycheck to paycheck in that apartment on 7th Street. Alone. He knew where she lived. Of course he did. But, he continued, the world is unpredictable. Restaurants close. Accidents happen. People remember things they wish they could forget, and sometimes that becomes burdensome. Her blood ran cold. He set down the glass and leaned forward, his voice softening. Or you help me solve a problem. You continue working at Vittorio's, exactly as before. Nothing changes except that you pay attention to specific people I point out. You tell me what you notice. And in return, he slid an envelope across the table. Elena didn't touch it. $20,000, he said. A retainer for your services. With the same amount each month you work with me. $20,000. She made that in 6 months of double shifts and smile through the pain service. I'm not asking you to hurt anyone, Vincent continued. I'm not asking you to plant evidence or testify in court. I'm simply asking you to do what you do every single day. Watch, listen, and remember. The only difference is that you'll share those memories with me. He made it sound so reasonable, so simple. But Elena knew better. She'd grown up in this city. She knew the stories. Once you were in Vincent Dante's world, you didn't just walk away. What if I see something illegal? She asked. You've been seeing illegal things for 3 years. Has it troubled you before? He had her there. Elena looked at the envelope. Thought about her mother in the nursing home across town, the one she could barely afford to visit because the bus fare cut into her grocery budget. Thought about the leak in her bathroom she couldn't pay to fix. The student loans that followed her like shadows. $20,000 would change everything, but it would also change her. I need time to think, she said. Vincent's expression hardened slightly. I'm afraid time is something I don't have. My people are dying, Elena. While we sit here enjoying our meal, someone is planning their next move, their next betrayal. He stood, buttoning his jacket. I'll be at Vittorio's tonight. Table 9, as always. When you serve my wine, if you accept my offer, mention that the 09 Barolo is an excellent choice. If you decline, he paused, then I'll know you've chosen a different path, and I'll respect that choice. But understand that once you walk away from this table, I won't make this offer again. He placed his napkin beside his plate with meticulous care. The car will take you wherever you'd like to go. The meal is paid for. Finish your lunch, Elena. Think carefully, and I'll see you tonight. He walked out, leaving her alone with an untouched plate of food and an envelope that might as well have been a grenade. Elena didn't go home. She walked instead, trying to clear her head. The city moved around her, tourists snapping photos, business people rushing to meetings, street vendors calling out their wares. Normal people living normal lives. Lives that didn't involve mob bosses and blood money. She found herself at St. Catherine's, the old church where her grandmother used to take her. Elena wasn't religious anymore, but the quiet stone interior felt safe, separate from the chaos outside. She sat in a back pew, staring at the stained glass windows. What would her grandmother say? The woman who'd raised her after her parents died, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep Elena in school, who'd believed that hard work and honesty would always win in the end. But her grandmother had also died exhausted and broke, her honesty earning her nothing but a pauper's funeral. Elena pulled the envelope from her purse. Inside, crisp hundreds were stacked in neat rows. She counted them twice. Exactly 20,000. More money than she'd ever held at once. She thought about Vincent's words. Nothing changes. Just watch and remember, you're not hurting anyone. But she'd be helping him hurt someone. Because that's what would happen when she identified the traitor. Vincent Dante didn't call the police. He didn't file lawsuits. He made people disappear. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother's nursing home. Miss Corso, your mother had an episode last night. She's stable now, but we need to discuss increasing her care level. Please call to schedule a meeting about payment options. Elena closed her eyes. Payment options. They meant more money she didn't have. Her mother didn't even recognize her anymore, lost in the fog of dementia, but she deserved better than the bare minimum care Elena could afford. $20,000 would give her that. Would give Elena breathing room. Would change everything. All she had to do was remember things. and tell a killer what she saw. At 6:30 that evening, Elena tied her apron and began her shift. Marco noticed immediately. You okay? You look pale. I'm fine. That lunch with Dante. I don't want to talk about it. The restaurant filled quickly. Table 7, Table 12, Table 4 with the anniversary couple back for another celebration. Elena moved through her routine, her body on autopilot while her mind churned. At 8:15, Vincent Dante arrived. He walked to Table 9 with two associates Elena recognized from previous visits. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her presence. She had 15 minutes before she'd need to take their drink order. 15 minutes to decide who she was going to be. The woman who played it safe, who stayed invisible, who scraped by on tips and hope. Or the woman who stepped into the darkness and let it pay her rent. Elena picked up her order pad, her hand surprisingly steady. She walked to Table 9. Vincent looked up, his expression neutral. Waiting. Their eyes met, and Elena opened her mouth to seal her fate. Good evening, Mr. Dante, Elena said, her voice calm. Would you like to start with wine tonight? Vincent's expression remained neutral. Professional. What do you recommend? This was it. The moment everything changed or stayed the same. Elena felt the weight of the envelope still in her purse in the back room. Thought of her mother's confused eyes during her last visit. Thought of the leak in her ceiling and the collection notices piling up. Thought of the line she was about to cross. The 2009 Barolo, she said quietly. It's an excellent choice. Something flickered in Vincent's eyes. Not quite a smile, but close. Then we'll have that. Thank you, Elena. She walked away on legs that felt like water, her heart pounding so hard she was certain the entire restaurant could hear it. She'd done it. She'd said yes to the devil. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Elena served tables, smiled at customers, and pretended everything was normal. But when Vincent and his associates left at 10:30, he paused by the host's stand. Miss Corso a moment? Marco glanced between them nervously, but said nothing. Vincent handed her a business card. Plain white, no name. Just a phone number embossed in black. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. The address on the back. Then he was gone. Elena flipped the card. An address in the business district. 20th floor. She slipped it into her apron and finished her shift, counting down the minutes until she could leave. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where hedge funds and law firms rented office space. The 20th floor directory listed Dante Consulting in tasteful bronze lettering. A receptionist with perfect posture and a knowing smile directed Elena to a corner office. Vincent sat behind a massive desk, but he rose when she entered. Always that courtesy that felt like mockery. You came. You didn't give me much choice. There's always a choice, Elena. He gestured to a chair. You made yours. Now we discuss the terms. She sat, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Vincent opened a folder. The man I'm looking for has been with my organization for at least 2 years. He has access to operational information, shipment schedules, personnel movements, financial transactions. He's feeding this information to the Castellano family. Your competition, Elena said. My enemies, he corrected. 3 of my people are dead because of this leak. 2 more are in hiding. I won't tolerate it continuing. He slid a stack of photographs across the desk. 12 men, all different ages and builds. These are the only people with access to the information that's been compromised. One of them is the traitor. Elena studied the faces. She recognized 3 from Vittorio's, regulars who came in every few weeks, always meeting with Vincent or his associates. What do you need from me? All 12 of these men will rotate through Vittorio's over the next 2 weeks. Some alone, some in groups. I need you to observe them. How they act, who they talk to, if they seem nervous, if they're watching exits, if they make phone calls. He leaned forward. Most importantly, I need you to listen. People say things they shouldn't when they think the waitress isn't paying attention. And if I identify him, then you tell me. And your work is done. It sounded so simple, so clean. But Elena wasn't naive enough to believe it would be. What happens to him when you find out who it is? Vincent's expression didn't change. That's not your concern. It becomes my concern when I'm the one who identifies him. A long silence stretched between them. You want honesty? Vincent said finally. He'll be dealt with. Permanently. But he's a traitor who's gotten good people killed. People with families. With children. He made his choice knowing the consequences. He pulled another envelope from his desk drawer. Thicker than the first. $40,000. 20 you've already received, and 20 more once you identify the leak. After that, you walk away. You go back to your life. We'll never speak again unless you choose to. And if I can't figure out who it is, then you keep the first 20,000 for trying. No hard feelings. Elena looked at the envelope, at the photographs, at the man who controlled more of the city than the mayor. One condition, she said. Vincent raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating? My mother's in a nursing home. She needs better care. I want half of the second payment up front to move her to a proper facility. The rest when I identify your traitor. For a long moment, Vincent just stared at her. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. You have spine, Elena Corso. I appreciate that. He pulled out a checkbook, actual paper, old-fashioned, and wrote. He slid it across the desk. 20,000. For your mother. The final 20 when you finish the job. Elena took the check with trembling fingers. It was made out to Riverside Care Facility, her mother's nursing home. Not to her. He'd known where her mother was all along. The first one comes in tomorrow night, Vincent said, tapping one of the photographs. Carlo Messina. He'll be at Vittorio's at 8. Table for 2. Pay attention. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. Elena gathered the photographs, her new phone number, her check. At the door, she paused. Why me? You must have dozens of people who could do this. Vincent considered the question. Because everyone in my world has an agenda. Everyone wants something beyond their payment. Power, position, respect. His eyes met hers. But you? You just want to take care of your mother and live your life. That kind of simplicity is rare. Valuable. He returned to his desk, already dismissing her. Be careful, Elena. These men are dangerous. If any of them suspect what you're doing, they won't hesitate to hurt you. So be the invisible waitress you've always been. Watch, listen, remember. He looked up one final time. And trust no one. That night, Elena couldn't eat. She sat in her apartment, the photographs spread across her small kitchen table like a macabre game of matching. 12 men. One traitor. And she was the one who had to find him. Her phone buzzed. A text from Riverside Care Facility. Check received. Your mother's transfer to the enhanced care wing is scheduled for this week. Thank you, Miss Corso. Elena closed her eyes, guilt and relief washing over her in equal measure. She'd crossed the line. There was no going back now. Carlo Messina arrived at Vittorio's exactly at 8. Elena watched from the service station as the hostess led him to table 6, not his usual spot. He was alone, constantly checking his phone, his knee bouncing under the table. Nervous energy radiated from him like heat. She approached with a practiced smile. Good evening, Mr. Messina. Can I start you with something to drink? He barely looked at her. Scotch. Neat. Make it a double. Of course. When she returned with his drink, a second man had joined him. Younger, maybe 30, with the kind of expensive haircut that cost more than her weekly rent. She didn't recognize him from Vincent's photographs. An outsider. Elena set down the scotch. Can I get you anything, sir? The young man waved her off without looking up. She retreated to a respectful distance, refilling water at the neighboring table, wiping down surfaces that didn't need wiping. Listening. Don't have much time, Carlo was saying, his voice low and urgent. Dante's getting suspicious. He brought in someone new to watch us. The young man leaned back, infuriatingly calm. Then maybe you should stop being so obvious. I'm being careful. You're sweating through your shirt at a restaurant meeting. That's not careful. That's guilty. Elena's pulse quickened. She moved to another nearby table, clearing plates that were already empty. The next shipment comes in Thursday, Carlo continued. Container 47 at Pier 19. 2 million in untraceable pharmaceuticals. If your people can intercept it, we'll handle our end. You just make sure Dante doesn't connect it back to you. And my payment. The young man slid something across the table. An envelope. 50,000. The rest when we confirm the shipment. Carlo grabbed it like a drowning man reaching for a life raft. Elena turned away, her mind racing. She had him. Clear evidence. A name, a shipment, a payment. Everything Vincent needed. But something felt wrong. Too easy. Too obvious. She delivered their menus, took their orders. Veal for Carlo, salmon for his companion, and moved through the motions of her job while her mind churned. Throughout dinner, Carlo grew more agitated. More drinks. More glances toward the door. The young man remained cold, controlled, barely touching his food. When they finally left at 9:30, Elena found herself staring at their empty table. She had her answer. Carlo Messina was the traitor. So why did her instincts scream that something was off? Elena waited until her shift ended before calling the number on Vincent's card. He answered on the first ring. Did you find something? Carlo Messina. Tonight. He met with someone, not from your organization. They discussed intercepting a shipment Thursday at Pier 19. Container 47. The other man paid him 50,000. Silence on the other end. Then, you're certain? I heard every word. Describe the other man. Elena closed her eyes, pulling up the memory perfectly. Early 30s. 6 feet tall. Brown hair, styled short on the sides. Gray suit, expensive. Diamond cufflinks. He had a scar above his left eyebrow, maybe an inch long. Alessandro Castellano, Vincent said quietly. The heir himself. More silence. Elena could almost hear him thinking. You did well, Elena. Very well. So that's it. We're done. Meet me tomorrow. Same place, same time. Bring the photographs. He hung up before she could respond. Elena sat in her parked car outside Vittorio's, staring at her phone. She'd done it. Identified the traitor in one night. So why did she feel like she'd just made a terrible mistake? The next afternoon, Vincent's office felt different. Colder. 2 men stood by the windows, not associates, enforcers. The kind who solved problems with violence. Vincent gestured for Elena to sit. Tell me everything again. Every detail. She did, her memory perfect as always. The conversation, the envelope, the description of Alessandro Castellano. Vincent listened without interruption. When she finished, he placed the photographs of the 12 suspects on his desk. Then he pulled out a 13th photograph. Is this the man you saw? Elena looked at the image. Same expensive haircut. Same cold eyes. But something was different. The scar was on the wrong eyebrow. Right instead of left. No, she said slowly. The scar was on the left side. And his cufflinks were diamond. These look like platinum in the photo. Vincent's expression darkened. You're absolutely certain? I don't forget details. He stood abruptly, walking to the window. Carlo Messina has been with me for 8 years. He's loyal. His daughter is my goddaughter. He would never betray me. Elena's stomach dropped. But I heard. You heard what someone wanted you to hear. Vincent turned, his eyes hard. Someone who knew I'd send you to observe. Someone who knows about your gift. The room felt suddenly smaller. It was a setup, Elena whispered. A very good one. Vincent returned to his desk. The real Alessandro Castellano is in Rome. Has been for 2 weeks. I verified it after your call last night. Which means someone sent an imposter to that meeting specifically to frame Carlo. But why? Because the real traitor knew I was getting close. Knew I'd brought in outside help. So he created a false trail. Vincent's jaw tightened. And he used Carlo, a good man, a loyal man, as the scapegoat. Elena felt sick. If you'd acted on my information, I would have killed an innocent man, and the real traitor would have remained hidden. He studied her carefully, but I didn't act, because I learned long ago to verify before I execute. Still, someone went to great lengths to feed you false information. Which means they know about me, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Vincent walked to his desk and pulled out a different set of photographs. 11 this time. Carlo's picture was missing. These are the only people who knew I'd brought in an outside observer. I was careful. I told each one separately, in private, that I had new eyes watching. I didn't mention your name or your method, just that I had help. He spread the photos across the desk. One of these men set up Carlo. One of them sent that imposter to Vittorio's knowing you'd be watching. One of them is smart enough, careful enough, to manipulate you. Elena stared at the faces. Men she'd served for years. Some friendly, some indifferent. One a killer. He knows who I am, she said. Probably. Which means you're now in danger. The enforcers by the window shifted slightly. Elena noticed for the first time that they weren't just there for show. They were there to protect her, or to make sure she didn't run. Vincent leaned forward, his voice deadly calm. You're going to help me find him, Elena. The real traitor. Because now it's not just about my organization. It's about your survival. He pushed the photographs toward her. Look carefully. Study them. These men will all come through Vittorio's again. And this time, you're not just looking for guilt. His eyes locked onto hers. You're looking for the man who's smart enough to stay hidden. The man who thinks he's already won. Elena didn't go home that night. Vincent insisted she stay at a property he owned. A furnished apartment in a secured building with a doorman who looked like he crushed skulls for cardio. One of the enforcers, a man named Dominic with gray temples and surgical scars on his knuckles, drove her to collect some clothes. "Make it quick," he said, standing in her doorway while she packed. "And don't touch the windows." "You think he's watching me?" "I think he's smart enough to consider it." Elena threw essentials into a bag with shaking hands. Her toothbrush, clean uniforms, the photograph of her mother from before the dementia. As Dominic led her back to the car, she glanced up at her apartment window. For just a second, she could have sworn she saw movement in the shadows across the street. The safe house was nicer than anywhere Elena had ever lived. Marble counters, floor-to-ceiling windows with bulletproof glass. Dominic made a point of mentioning that detail. A pantry stocked with more food than she'd seen in months. "Don't leave without calling first," Dominic said, handing her a new phone. "Vincent's number is programmed. Mine too. You see anything suspicious, you call immediately." "How long am I supposed to stay here?" "Until we find him." He left, the door's deadbolt sliding home with a finality that made Elena's chest tighten. She was safe. She was trapped. And somewhere out there, a man who'd killed 3 people knew exactly who she was. Sleep came in fragments. Every sound, the building settling, the elevator down the hall, footsteps from the apartment above, jerked her awake. By dawn, she'd given up entirely. The new phone buzzed at 7. Vincent's text was brief. "Continue normal schedule. Act like nothing's changed. Dominic will shadow you." Normal. As if anything about this was normal. Elena arrived at Vittorio's for the lunch shift to find Marco studying her with concern. "Where have you been? You didn't answer my texts." "I'm fine. Just needed some space." "Space from what?" "Elena, what's going on?" She wanted to tell him. Wanted to unload everything. The money, the photographs, the traitor who knew her face. But Vincent's words echoed. "Trust no one." "Family stuff," she lied. "My mom's care facility. It's handled now." Marco didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. The lunch shift crawled by. Elena found herself studying every customer, every face. Was that man at table 3 watching her too closely? Was the woman at the bar asking too many questions? Paranoia was a poison that seeped into everything. At 2:30, 3 of the men from Vincent's photographs arrived together. Tommy the shark, Ricci, 50-something, with hands like catcher's mitts. Paul Delgado, smooth, handsome, the kind of man who charmed his way into and out of trouble. And Frank Torino, quiet, calculating, always watching. Elena approached their table, her heart hammering. "Gentlemen, what can I get you?" "The usual, sweetheart," Tommy said, not looking up from his phone. She took their orders, hyper-aware of every movement, every word. They talked about a construction project. About someone named Benny who'd screwed up a delivery. Normal business. Too normal? Paul caught her eye as she refilled their water. "You look tired, Elena. Everything okay?" The question felt loaded. Or was she imagining things? "Long week," she said with a practiced smile. "Tell me about it." He grinned. "But hey, at least it's almost over, right?" She nodded and escaped to the kitchen. Through the service window, she watched them. Frank kept glancing toward the entrance. Tommy's leg bounced under the table, nervous energy, like Carlo's had been. Paul seemed relaxed, but his eyes tracked every person who walked past. One of them could be the traitor. One of them might know exactly what she was doing right now. At 4, her phone buzzed. "Vincent, come to the office." Now, Dominic materialized from wherever he'd been lurking. She still hadn't spotted him all day, and drove her to the glass building in silence. Vincent's office was crowded. For men Elena recognized from the organization, all watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. "Sit," Vincent said. She did. He pulled up security footage on a large monitor. "This is from last night. Outside your apartment building." The image showed her street. Timestamp, 11:47 p.m. A figure stood in the shadows across from her building. Too far away for facial recognition. Just standing. Watching. At 11:52, the figure pulled out a phone. Made a call. At 11:58, he walked away. 37 minutes after you left with Dominic, Vincent said. Someone was checking to see if you came home. Elena's mouth went dry. We pulled traffic cameras from the area. He walked 4 blocks before getting into a car. Plates were stolen. The car was found abandoned this morning. Vincent paused the footage. But we got this. He zoomed in on the figure. The image was grainy, but clear enough to see one detail. The man wore a distinctive ring on his right hand. Large, ornate. A family crest. Vincent pulled out the 11 photographs. Pointed to one. Paul Delgado. The Delgado family crest. Worn by every male in their bloodline. Vincent's voice was ice. Paul was at your restaurant today. Did he say anything? Do anything unusual? Elena's mind raced back through the interaction. He asked if I was okay. Said I looked tired. What else? Nothing. Just small talk. He seemed normal. One of the men in the room snorted. Paul's never been normal. He's a snake. Always has been. Vincent silenced him with a look. But he's been careful. No mistakes in 8 years. No red flags. He turned back to Elena. Until now? Until he got nervous about someone watching. It doesn't make sense, Elena said. Why would he tip his hand like this? Why not just stay away? Because he doesn't know that we know, Vincent said. He thinks he's still in control. Thinks he successfully framed Carlo. Now he's just making sure his only witness doesn't become a problem. The word witness made Elena's skin crawl. So what do we do? She asked. Vincent's smile was predatory. We give him exactly what he wants. We make him think you're vulnerable. Alone. Easy to reach. One of the men stepped forward. You're using her as bait. I'm giving her a chance to finish this, Vincent corrected. Paul will make a move. And when he does, we'll be ready. He looked at Elena. Tomorrow night, you'll leave work alone. Take your normal route home. The real home, not the safe house. Dominic and my team will be following, but at a distance. If Paul approaches you, stay calm. Get him talking. Find out what he knows. And if he tries to kill me, he won't. Not immediately. He'll want to know what you've told me first. What you've figured out. Vincent's expression softened slightly. You'll be protected every second. But I need you to trust me. Trust. From a man who made people disappear. But what choice did she have? Okay, Elena whispered. I'll do it. That night in the safe house, Elena couldn't stop staring at Paul Delgado's photograph. His smile. His charm. The way he'd asked if she was okay. Had he been measuring her? Planning his next move? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her blood froze. She answered, hand trembling. Hello. Breathing on the other end. Then a voice, distorted, mechanical. You should have stayed invisible, Elena. The line went dead. Elena dropped the phone like it had burned her. She called Dominic immediately. He was there in 3 minutes, checking the apartment, the hallway, the building. He can't get to you here, Dominic assured her. The building's secure. But as Elena lay awake in the dark, she realized security didn't matter. Paul Delgado had her number, which meant he could reach her whenever he wanted. Elena's hands shook as she tied her apron the next evening. This was it. The night she'd walk home alone knowing a killer was watching. Knowing he'd already threatened her. Knowing that despite Dominic's promises, she could still end up dead in an alley. Marco noticed her pallor. You sure you're okay to work? I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. He lowered his voice. Whatever's going on with you and those men, Dante and his crew, just be careful. They're dangerous people. If only he knew how deep she already was. The dinner shift started normally. Tables filled. Orders flowed. Elena moved through the motions, but her awareness had sharpened to a razor's edge. At 7:15, Paul Delgado walked in. Alone. He requested table 11, a corner booth with clear sight lines to the entire dining room and the exit. Strategic positioning. Elena's pulse hammered as she approached. Good evening, Mr. Delgado. His smile was warm, disarming. Elena, good to see you. Rough day yesterday. Just busy. I bet. He ordered wine without looking at the menu. The Sangiovese. And I'll start with the calamari. Of course. As she turned to leave, he spoke again. Hey, Elena. You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't working here? If you could do anything? The question stopped her cold. Too personal. Too probing. I haven't really thought about it. You should. Life's short. Never know when things might change. His eyes held hers a beat too long. Opportunities come. Opportunities go. The threat was veiled, but unmistakable. I'll get your wine, she said. In the kitchen, she pulled out the phone Dominic had given her. Send a single text. He's here. The response came immediately. We know. Stay calm. Follow the plan. The plan. Walk home alone. Let Paul make his move. Trust that Vincent's men would save her before things went too far. Simple. Except for the part where she could die. Elena delivered Paul's wine and appetizer. Throughout his meal, she felt his eyes tracking her movements. Not like Vincent's clinical assessment. This was different. A predator watching prey. At 9:30, he paid his bill. Left $100 tip on a $40 meal. For excellent service, he said, his smile never reaching his eyes. You take care of yourself, Elena. Be safe out there. Then he was gone. Elena finished her shift in a daze. At 11, she clocked out, changed out of her uniform in the back room, and stepped into the cool night air. The street was quiet. Too quiet. She started walking toward her real apartment, the one she hadn't been to in 2 days. Every shadow felt hostile. Every sound magnified. 2 blocks from Vittorio's, footsteps echoed behind her. Elena's breath caught. Don't run. Don't look back. Act natural. The footsteps grew closer. Elena. She turned. Paul Delgado stood 10 feet away, his hands in his pockets. Casual. Friendly. Terrifying. Funny running into you, he said. Mr. Delgado. I didn't know you lived in this neighborhood. I don't. But I saw you walking alone and thought I'd make sure you got home safe. City's dangerous at night. He closed the distance between them. Elena forced herself not to back away. That's thoughtful, but I'm fine. Are you? He tilted his head. Because you seem nervous lately. Jumpy. And I heard something interesting. What's that? That Vincent's brought in outside help. Someone watching us. Listening to conversations. Reporting back. His smile widened. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. I'm just a waitress. That's what I thought. But then I started paying attention. And you know what I noticed? He took another step closer. You never write anything down. Not orders, not special requests. Nothing. You just remember everything perfectly. Where was Dominic? Where was Vincent's team? Lots of servers work without notepads, Elena said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Not like you. Paul's hand emerged from his pocket. No weapon, just his phone. He showed her the screen. A photograph of her leaving Vincent's office building 2 days ago. Want to explain what a waitress was doing at Dante Consulting? Elena's mind raced. Lie? Run? Scream? Before she could decide, Paul's expression shifted. His eyes cut to something behind her. Well, he said softly. Looks like we've got company. Elena turned. Dominic stood at the end of the block. 2 other men flanked him. Paul laughed, but it was brittle. Forced. Smart. Using yourself as bait. I underestimated you, Elena. You underestimated Vincent, she corrected, her fear crystallizing into anger. He knew you'd come for me. Did he? Paul's smile turned cold. Or did I know he'd set a trap and decided to spring it anyway? Before Elena could process that, Paul raised his voice. You can come out now. Movement in the shadows. From doorways, from parked cars, from the alley across the street, men emerged. 6 of them, armed. Dominic's hand went to his jacket. I wouldn't, Paul called out. You're outnumbered. Outgunned. This doesn't have to get messy. Elena's stomach dropped. This wasn't Paul being cornered. This was Paul revealing his own trap. You planned this, she whispered. Of course I did. You think I'm stupid? I've been 3 moves ahead of Vincent for 2 years. He turned back to Dominic. Tell your boss I'm done playing games. I'm taking over the Castellano territories whether he likes it or not. And anyone who stands in my way. He looked at Elena. Disappears. The standoff stretched. Armed men on both sides. Elena caught in the middle. Then Dominic did something unexpected. He laughed. You really think you're ahead? He said, pulling out his phone. He showed it to Paul. Elena couldn't see the screen, but Paul's face went white. What the hell is that? Live footage from inside your apartment, Dominic said. Vincent's people have been there for the last hour. Found some very interesting things. Bank statements showing payments from the Castellanos. Burner phones with deleted texts. A ledger documenting every shipment you've compromised. Paul's jaw clenched. That's impossible. I was careful. You were distracted, Dominic corrected. Too busy setting up this little ambush to notice we were setting up our own. Too focused on Elena to realize she was never the real bait. He gestured to the men around them. You were. The sound of sirens split the night. Multiple cars, getting closer. Cops. Paul's voice rose. Vincent called the cops? Federal agents, actually, Dominic said. Turns out the FBI's been investigating the Castellano family for months. And when we offered them a traitor willing to testify about mob operations in exchange for leniency, well, they were very interested. Paul's men shifted nervously. The sirens grew louder. You set me up, Paul said, disbelief and fury warring on his face. You set yourself up, Elena found herself saying. You got arrogant. Thought you were smarter than everyone else. Paul's eyes locked onto hers with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've done. The Castellanos won't stop. They'll come for you. For everyone you love. The Castellanos are being raided right now, Dominic interrupted. Your contacts, your protection, gone. You're alone, Paul. Federal vehicles screeched around the corner, flooding the street with light. Paul's men dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Smart enough to know when they were beaten. But Paul just stood there, staring at Elena with something between rage and grudging respect. All this, he said quietly, over a waitress with a good memory. Not just a good memory, Elena replied. A perfect one. The agents swarmed in. Paul was handcuffed, read his rights, led away still glaring at her over his shoulder. When the street finally cleared, Elena stood alone with Dominic. Is it really over? She asked. The traitors caught. The Castellanos are compromised. Vincent's organization is secure. Dominic nodded. Yeah, it's over. Elena should have felt relief. Victory. Safety. Instead, she felt hollow. Because she knew the truth that Dominic hadn't said aloud. This world, Vincent's world, was never really over. It just found new battles to fight. Vincent Dante's office felt different the next morning. Lighter somehow, despite the gray clouds pressing against the windows. Or maybe it was just Elena, finally able to breathe without looking over her shoulder. Vincent sat behind his desk, looking almost relaxed. Almost. You did well, he said. Better than I expected. I didn't do much. I was just bait. You were perfect bait. Convincing. Vulnerable enough to draw him out, but smart enough to stay alive. He slid an envelope across the desk. The final payment. $20,000, as agreed. Elena stared at the envelope but didn't reach for it. Paul said something last night. That the Castellanos would come for me. Paul was trying to scare you. The Castellano organization is in shambles. Federal raids hit 6 of their properties simultaneously. Their leadership is either in custody or in hiding. Vincent leaned back. You're safe, Elena. I give you my word. His word. The word of a mob boss. But strangely, she believed him. What happens to Paul? She asked. He'll cooperate with the FBI. Tell them everything he knows about both the Castellanos and my operations in exchange for witness protection. Vincent's expression hardened. He'll live, which is more mercy than he showed the people he got killed. Elena finally picked up the envelope. $40,000 total. More money than she'd ever dreamed of having. Blood money. Except it wasn't really. She hadn't killed anyone. Hadn't even directly fingered Paul. Vincent's people had found the evidence. She'd just observed. Remembered. Done exactly what she'd always done. Our arrangement is complete, Vincent said. You'll return to your life. I'll return to mine. The only thing that changes is that your mother now has the care she deserves. He stood, extending his hand. Elena shook it. His grip was firm, brief. If you ever need anything, within reason, you call the number I gave you, he said. You've earned that much. I don't want to owe you favors. You don't. Consider it professional courtesy. You helped me when I needed it. I remember that. Elena turned to leave, then paused. The men who died because of Paul, did they have families? Vincent's expression shifted. Something almost human flickered in his eyes. 2 wives. 5 children between them. They're being taken care of. Financially, at least. Good. She meant it. At the door, Vincent spoke again. Elena, you have a rare gift. Your memory, yes, but also your ability to see people clearly. To understand them. Don't waste it serving pasta to tourists. What else would I do? Anything you want. You're not invisible anymore. At least not to yourself. The word stayed with her as Dominic drove her back to the safe house to collect her things. Not invisible anymore. For 3 years, she'd perfected the art of being overlooked. A pleasant smile, efficient service, a face that customers forgot the moment they left the restaurant. But she'd seen things now. Done things. Mattered in ways that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Elena returned to her real apartment that afternoon. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The leak in the bathroom ceiling. The rattling radiator. The view of the laundromat across the street. Home. Except it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a cage she'd been too afraid to leave. She opened her laptop and checked her bank account. The deposits had cleared. $20,000 from Vincent initially. The check for her mother's care. Now the final $20,000. Enough to change everything. Or enough to run. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Elena's heart jumped before she remembered. Paul was in federal custody. She was safe. She answered. Hello. Miss Corso? This is Margaret Chin from Riverside Care Facility. I'm calling about your mother. Elena's grip tightened on the phone. Is she okay? She's fine. Better than fine, actually. The enhanced care program has been wonderful for her. She's been more alert, more engaged. This morning, she was looking at photographs and she said something. Elena's breath caught. Her mother hadn't spoken coherently in 8 months. What did she say? She said your name. Clear as day. Elena. Then she looked right at me and said, "My daughter takes care of me." Tears burned Elena's eyes. "I thought you'd want to know," Margaret continued gently. "Small moments like this, they matter. What you're doing for her matters." After the call ended, Elena sat in her small apartment and let herself cry. For her mother, for the 3 men who'd died, for Carlo, who'd almost been killed for a crime he didn't commit, for herself, for the innocence she'd lost and the strength she'd found. The money had bought her mother dignity, awareness, moments of clarity in the fog. Maybe that made everything else worth it. That evening, Elena went to Vittorio's. Not to work, she had the night off. Just to see it from the outside. To remember what it had been before Vincent Dante walked into her life. Marco was managing the floor, his usual controlled chaos. The anniversary couple sat at table 4. New faces filled the other tables. The world kept turning. She almost walked away. Then Marco spotted her through the window. He came outside, concern creasing his forehead. "Elena, are you okay? You've been so strange lately." "I'm fine. Really." She managed a smile. "I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For being a good friend. For caring. For not asking too many questions." He studied her face. "You're leaving, aren't you?" "Quitting." The words hung in the cool evening air. Elena hadn't consciously decided until that moment. But hearing it spoken aloud, she knew it was true. "I need a change," she said. "I've been invisible here for too long." "You were never invisible to me," Marco said quietly. "You're the best server we have. Hell, you're the best person I know. Then you'll understand why I need to do this." He pulled her into a hug. Brief, fierce. "Go be extraordinary somewhere else. You were wasted here anyway." 2 weeks later, Elena walked into the administrative office of Riverside Care Facility. Margaret Chin looked up in surprise. "Miss Corso, I wasn't expecting you." "I want to apply for a job," Elena said. "I saw you're hiring for patient advocates. People who help families navigate care options, coordinate with medical staff, ensure patients are getting what they need." Margaret's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a change from waitressing." "I'm good with details. I remember things. And I understand what families are going through." Elena met her eyes. "My mother has good days now because someone helped me figure out how to give her better care. I want to do that for other people." Margaret smiled. "The position requires certification. Training. It's not easy work." "I'm not looking for easy. I'm looking for meaningful." "When can you start?" 3 months later, Elena sat in her new apartment, modest but clean, with no leaks and a view of the park instead of a laundromat. Her mother's photographs covered one wall. Pictures from before the disease. Her mother laughing, vibrant, alive. Elena visited her 3 times a week now. Some days, her mother knew her. Other days, she didn't. But she was comfortable, safe, cared for. That was enough. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I heard about your new job. Good for you. V." She stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Vincent Dante was part of her past now. A chapter that had ended. But sometimes, late at night, she still remembered. Paul Delgado's cold smile. The weight of the envelope. The feeling of being hunted through dark streets. The moment she'd realized she was stronger than she'd ever known. She'd stepped into the darkness and survived. More than survived, she'd won. And though she'd left that world behind, it had left its mark on her. A hardness around the edges. A wariness. An understanding that people were capable of both terrible cruelty and surprising grace. She was no longer the invisible waitress who drifted through life, hoping not to be noticed. She was Elena Corso, and she would never be invisible again. 6 months after leaving Vittorio's, Elena stood in the conference room at Riverside Care Facility, presenting to a room full of families. "Memory care isn't just about safety," she was saying. "It's about dignity. About preserving the person inside the disease." 15 faces watched her. Some hopeful, some exhausted. All desperate for answers she'd once desperately needed herself. "My mother has advanced dementia," Elena continued. "Some days she doesn't know my name. But she knows she's loved. She knows she's safe. And occasionally, just occasionally, she comes back to me for a few precious minutes. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes. Elena had found her calling in these moments, helping families navigate the impossible maze of elder care. Using her perfect memory to track medications, doctor's appointments, insurance claims, all the crushing details that overwhelmed people already drowning in grief. She remembered everything so they didn't have to carry it all alone. After the presentation, several families approached with questions. Elena answered each one, her mind cataloging names, situations, needs. Mrs. Patterson's husband, Alzheimer's, stage 4, needed specialized feeding assistance. The Chun family's grandmother, recovering from a stroke, required physical therapy coordination. Mr. Okoye's wife, early onset dementia, only 53, 2 teenage children struggling to cope. Each story locked into Elena's memory. Each person became more than a case file. They became her purpose. That evening, Elena visited her mother. Rosa Corso sat in the sunroom of the enhanced care wing, staring out at the gardens. Her silver hair was neatly brushed. She wore the blue cardigan Elena had brought her favorite color, from before. "Hi, Mama," Elena said, settling into the chair beside her. Her mother turned slowly. For a moment, there was nothing, just the vacant confusion that had become familiar. Then something shifted in her eyes. "Elena," she said clearly. "You came." Elena's throat tightened. The good days were becoming rarer. She treasured each one like diamonds. "I always come, Mama. 3 times a week, remember?" Her mother smiled vaguely. The clarity was already fading, like morning mist burning away. But she reached for Elena's hand, squeezed it. "You're a good girl," she whispered. "Always taking care of everyone." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the gardens gold. Elena told her mother about her day, about the families she'd helped, about the new training program she was developing. She talked even though she wasn't sure how much her mother understood, because the sound of her voice seemed to bring comfort. And comfort was all Elena could offer now. "I got a letter today," Elena said, "from the state certification board. They want me to teach a class on patient advocacy, help train other people to do this work." Her mother's eyes were distant now, lost somewhere Elena couldn't follow. "I never thought I'd be a teacher," Elena continued. "I was just a waitress, remember? You used to worry about me. Said I was wasting my potential." She laughed softly. "You were right. But it took me a while to figure that out." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Visiting hours are ending soon, Miss Corso." Elena nodded. She stayed another 10 minutes, holding her mother's hand, memorizing this moment like she memorized everything. The way the light caught her mother's silver hair, the warmth of her palm, the faint scent of lavender from the facility's soap. When she finally left, her mother was already asleep in her chair, peaceful, safe. Elena's apartment had changed in 6 months. The walls that had been bare now held artwork, pieces she'd picked up from local artists. The kitchen she'd never used now contained actual groceries, actual cooking supplies. She'd even bought plants, living things that required care and attention. She was building a life, not just surviving one. Her phone buzzed as she made tea. A text from Margaret Chun. "The Okoye family you met today, they specifically requested you as their advocate. You made an impression." Elena smiled. This was her gift now, not just remembering, but using that memory to help people navigate their darkest moments. She settled onto her couch with her tea and opened her laptop. Emails from families. Follow-up notes for tomorrow. A draft of the training curriculum she was developing. Purpose, meaning, impact. 3 things she'd never had at Vittorio's. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Elena hesitated, then answered. "Hello. Elena Corso?" The voice was older, refined, unfamiliar. "Speaking. My name is Dr. Patricia Reeves. I'm a neurologist specializing in memory disorders at University Hospital. I heard about your work at Riverside from several colleagues, and I have a proposition for you." Elena sat up straighter. "I'm listening." "We're developing a new research program examining exceptional memory capabilities and their application in caregiving contexts. Your particular type of memory, the comprehensive retention, is extremely rare. We'd like to study it. More importantly, we'd like to work with you to develop training protocols that could help other caregivers." "You want to study me?" "We want to collaborate with you. Understand how your brain processes and retains information." then use that understanding to help thousands of other people caring for loved ones with memory disorders. Dr. Reeves paused. There would be compensation, of course, but I suspect that's not what motivates you. She was right. When would this start? Elena asked. Whenever you're ready. But I'd love to meet next week to discuss details. After the call ended, Elena sat in the quiet of her apartment, processing. Her gift, the thing that had made her valuable to a mob boss, could now help advance medical research, could help families like hers. The same ability, different purpose, opposite outcomes. 2 weeks later, Elena found herself in a hospital conference room surrounded by neurologists, researchers, and medical students. Tell us about your earliest memory, Dr. Reeves said. Elena closed her eyes. I was 2 years and 7 months old. My mother was baking bread. I can still smell the yeast. She was wearing a yellow dress with white buttons. 3 of them were loose. I remember because she'd been meaning to sew them. The radio was playing Sinatra. Fly Me to the Moon. The researchers exchanged glances. And you can recall events like this from your entire life? One asked. Every day? Every conversation? Every detail? Elena opened her eyes. It used to feel like a burden. Now I understand it's a gift. They ran tests for hours. Memory exercises. Brain scans. Cognitive assessments. Through it all, Elena remained patient. Because this wasn't about her anymore. This was about every exhausted daughter trying to remember her father's medications. Every overwhelmed son juggling care schedules. Every family drowning in details during the worst time of their lives. If her strange brain could help them, then everything she'd been through, including the dark chapter with Vincent Dante, had meaning. That evening, Elena walked through the city as the sun set. She passed Vittorio's without stopping. Through the window, she could see Marco managing the dinner rush. A new server, young, eager, was taking orders without writing them down. Elena smiled. Someone else learning to be invisible. But she kept walking. Past the glass tower where Vincent's office was. Past the street where Paul Delgado had cornered her. Past all the ghosts of who she used to be. Her phone buzzed. Her mother's facility. Miss Corso? Your mother just said something I thought you'd want to know about. Elena's heart jumped. What did she say? She was looking at your photograph, the one you brought. And she said, my Elena. She remembers for everyone now. I'm so proud. Tears blurred Elena's vision. Thank you for calling. She stood on the sidewalk as the city moved around her. Thousands of people rushing to appointments, to dinners, to lives she'd never know. But she saw them all, remembered them all. The businessman on his phone, worried expression, wedding ring, coffee stain on his sleeve. The young mother with a stroller, exhausted eyes, humming to her baby, shoes worn at the heels. The elderly couple holding hands, married 50 years if the matching anniversary bands meant anything, him slowing his pace to match hers. Every detail, every story, every human moment. This was her gift. Not just the memory itself, but the ability to truly see people. To recognize that every face held a universe of joy and pain and hope. She'd been invisible for so long because she thought it kept her safe. But safety wasn't living. It was just surviving. Elena Corso had spent 3 years watching other people's lives unfold while her own stood still. No more. She pulled out her phone and opened the voice memo app. Note to self, she said quietly. Start writing that book about memory care. The one Margaret keeps telling you families need. The one you've been too scared to start. She paused. Also, call Dr. Reeves tomorrow. Tell her yes to the research program. Full participation. Another pause. And maybe it's time to actually use that dating app Sarah from work won't stop talking about. Life's too short to spend it alone. She smiled at her own voice. Then she walked home through the city that had almost destroyed her and instead had remade her into something stronger. The waitress who'd outsmarted a mafia boss. The daughter who'd saved her mother. The woman who remembered everything and chose to use that gift to heal instead of harm. Elena Corso was no longer invisible, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure that the people who needed to be seen, the forgotten, the overwhelmed, the caregivers carrying impossible burdens, would never be invisible either. Because she would remember them. All of them. Always. Elena's journey from invisible waitress to empowered advocate shows us that our greatest gifts often come from our deepest struggles. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional, life-changing stories every week. Drop a comment below and tell us, What would you have done in Elena's position? Would you have taken Vincent's offer or walked away? Thank you for watching. And remember, you're never truly invisible when you choose to be seen. See you in the next story.